Depends on the locale. Boker Tov. Today's daf is Daf Samachdal and קידושין, as we learned for the Savior and good health of Achenu Kol Beis Yisrael. Says the Mishnah from Samachdal. A man says that I married off my young daughter, or even better, I married her off and I divorced her while she was a young girl, and therefore she can't marry a Kohen now. She's a Grusha. As long as she's still a Ktan and Emma. Why? Because since he has the abilities, we'll see, to marry her off now and divorce her apparently and get her divorced, so he's believed to say she can't marry a Kohen. But let's say she's now, over here we mean 12 and a half, she's a Bulgarian, because a man can marry off his daughter until the age of 12 and a half, even though she's a Bas Mitzvah at 12, as we've learned many times. Then ain't an eminent. He's not empowered because he can't do it right now. He can't marry her off right now, so he can't say that she can't marry a Kohen if she's already a Gdola. Nishbis of Disia, if she's been captured by the Goyim and I ransomed her, I redeemed her, Ben Shitana Ben Shitana, he's not believed in that at all. So the Gemara says right away, why in the beginning, I should say, why is he believed, the father's believed at the beginning to ruin her from marrying a Kohen, and in the Seifa, he's not believed, meaning when she's a Gdola, or to say that she was captured. And we'll see this is an important difference because the Gemara doesn't say it, the Rashi explains it. When she's, if she's been divorced, she can't marry a Kohen, right? Divorced, we know, can't marry a Kohen. However, if she's been violated by the Goyim, she was captured, not only can she not marry a Kohen, but she can't eat Truma, even if her father is a Kohen. And she's back in her father's house with no children from a Yisrael husband. She's possibly married too. So the question is, what's in the ratio where he's believed to say, my young daughter, she's still a Tan, I married her and I got her divorced, and she can marry a Kohen. Then in the Seifa, either the Seifa Rashi says is both things really. Seifa, we're either to marry her off when she's a Gdol, which he can't do when she's 12 and a half, and he can't give her to a Kohen. He's not capable of handing her over to a Goy to violate her. So what's the difference there? There's Reisha Biyada. In the Reisha, it's in this power. He can marry her off. Seifa la Biyada. In the Seifa, number one, if she's 12 and a half, he can't marry her off. But the truth is there, we're only dealing with the ability to marry a Kohen. In terms of Truma, Rashi says not only the Seifa, we're not talking about marrying off a regular 12 and a half year old girl, but also to give her over to a Goy, which would prohibit her from ever eating Truma again. and that it's not in his power to do that. It's once she's a Gedola, he can't do it. Even when he's even when she's a Ketana, he's not allowed to give her to a Goy. Even when she's 10, he can marry her off to a Jew, but he can't marry her to a Goy. So therefore, it's safe of Levitt, it's not in his jurisdiction to do that. Doesn't matter below, is it not the case? For Rabbi Yado, you're saying that it's not in his jurisdiction to prohibit her from eating Truma ever again, let's say by handing her over to a Goy. For Rabbi Yado, Lasil Halal, when she's a Ketana, he can marry her off to a Halal. A Halal is a disqualified Kohen, let's say. If a Kohen Gadol marries some Amana, or a Kohen marries a Grusha, the son is a Halal, so it doesn't have an a Kohen. So if you marry to a Halal, the Kapasim, that ruins her from eating Kuna, from marrying a Kohen, and presumably also from eating Truma, right? Because he says that, because we're going to say later on, we're going to talk about that. Rashi brings down Amoni Boavi Kuti, all these people you're not supposed to marry, it ruins her from eating Truma. So Kasha. Rabbi the story goes like Rabbi Story, who has an opinion, Ben Yehuda, Rabbi Yehuda says, a halal, it's not a terrible person. He's not a mamzer, right? He's not a halal. He's not a mamzer or somebody who's forbidden. But if he marries a Yisraelis, he marries a regular girl, she's like a mikvatar. In other words, the children are not halalim. She marries a girl, the kids are not halalim. And that a girl can marry. That's right. What? Right. Rashi says, take a Rashi. But notice Yisrael mikvatar the bas halal zachar sheira lakuna. Right, exactly. If she's a married to a halal, her daughter can marry a kohen. She's totara esara. But even the bituk sheira, almanasik sheira also. His alman is also kosher. Choshat nanosa bitat nanosa masas. We have a cloth. You can marry the daughter. You can marry the almana. You can marry the daughter of this person. You can marry his almana. Look, it can't be able to live so bituk tana min akuna. It can't ruin her from kuna, or it can't marry. It's not forbidden from marrying from a kuna or from eating truma, as Rashi goes on to say. Right. So the children are okay. The children can marry a Kohen. That's what we're saying. A daughter of Israel, meaning a Israelis, she's like a mikvatara. The father's a halal, but the child will not be. The child can't marry. The child is not a Kohen, right? He's not a Kohen. The father's a halal, but he's not ruined from marrying a Kohen. The child can marry a Kohen. So the point there is that we're trying to say, isn't it in his jurisdiction to marry off to somebody who would prohibit her from marrying to ruin her from eating truma, from marrying Kohen? No. If he marries his daughter off to a halal, the child is not prohibited from marrying a Kohen. So nor is she. She's not married. And as if a woman is married to a halal, if a woman's divorced, she can't marry a Kohen. But if she's married to a halal, there's no problem with that. But you can marry off to a mamzer, and that would ruin. That would marries a mamzer. That would certainly prohibit. She's not allowed. That would certainly prohibit her from marrying a Kohen, if not from eating truma as well. The answer is correct. But keep it down. Keep holds that kedushin is not topis. You can't marry up to a mamzer. Can't marry up to a mamzer. Kedushin is not topis there. So if she's married, so it's not biyado vasos. He's not capable of giving her over to. We're assuming over here he's not going to give her over to snus, right? It's not biyado to marry her off to a Kohen. If it's not married off to marry to, I mean, you could say that, if she sleeps with the mamzer, maybe she wouldn't marry a Kohen also. I don't know if that would ruin her from eating truma though. I mean, so he says, you can't marry off to a going like a Bekiva. You can't marry. She can't marry to קידושין. Doesn't work by chai v'lavim. Even according to Rabbi Akiva, but an almana marrying a Kohen Gadol would work. The time of Akiva makes mamzer from any prohibited marriage, from any lav, any Israel lav, which we hold is kedushin's toe face. The child could be ruined, but the kedushin works. Akiva makes a mamzer chutz mi'amala Kohen Gadol. Why? He learns in Russia, says don't marry an almana. Kohen Gadol shouldn't marry an almana. If he does, he'd be machal l'shul. It's mashma machal l'shul. Not there. So he could ruin her from marrying a Kohen, ruin her from Kohuna and from Truma by marrying her off to a Kohen Gadol, So there is a possibility there. The answer is that it goes like for Rabbi Sheva. Rabbi Sheva interprets Rabbi Akiva to say any lav makes a mamzer, meaning any lav kedushin will not be chal. It's mashma according to Rav Samoy that according to Rabbi Akiva, kedushin would be tofes by almana l'kohen gadol. But according to Rabbi Sheva, not the Omer Bo, but I'll keep it. Let's scream, let's holler out at Rabbi Yosef. Sheyomer kol shein lo b'yav Yisrael, any forbidden marriage, the kids of Vlad Mamzer. So therefore, he can't marry her off to anybody like that. If he marries her off to a halal, that's not a problem. It doesn't ruin her from marrying a Kohen or her daughter. Marry off to a Mamzer, it's not chal. So you can't marry off to a Mamzer. That's good from B'Sheva. He says any prohibited marriage, whether it's a lav, a kares, a simple lav, and I say anything is also fine. So you're right. Anything like that, kedushin will not be chal. So you can't marry off to something like that. The marriage wouldn't work. But if he's just coming to exclude from Rav Samoy's svara, because Rav Samoy said says that Rabbi Akiva made mamzera, meaning kedushin would be chal by all lav, and except for almana l'kohen gadol. He was only excluding from that. He was trying to say, no, I don't agree with that. Even lav almana l'kohen gadol also. Rabbi Akiva would say that that's a mamzer and the kedushin would be chal. So if he's coming to exclude just from Rimoi, but he would still hold that. Let's say an Israel lav. What's an Israel lav? Let's say a Mitzri Adomi, right? You can't marry. That's an Israel lav. Israel marrying the first 3 generations can't marry Israel. Right? So he could marry her off that way and ruin her from marrying a Kohen, possibly from marrying a Kohen from eating truma. So what's the problem over here? In other words, you're saying that in the Reisha, the reason why he's believed is because she's a young girl, he can still marry off now. In the Seifa, he's not empowered to marry off when she's 12, once she's 12 anyway, and he cannot ruin her from marrying a Kohen. He could marry her from marrying a Kohen, but he could marry her off to an Isra say, like a Mitzri when she's a Ketana, he could marry her, so he could ruin her from eating truma there too. Do you think the reason really is The whole Sfard, you said, in the Reisha and the Sefer, the Reisha, he's empowered, he's authorized to do it. In the Sefer, he's not. The he to be able to catch he can marry her off. Okay, he's empowered. He can take his 5-year-old daughter and marry her off to whomever he wants. At the scholar. The he to be able to catch be able to garsha. He says, in other words, how does he ruin her from eating? That's just beating that she has very neman. He's believed to ruin her from marrying a Kohen, right? How? How does he? He's not empowered. Can he force the other guy to divorce her? Marry off his 5-year-old daughter to some guy, right? Can he guarantee that the guy's going to divorce her? That she's not going to? He's not empowered. He doesn't have the authority to ruin her. That's right. It's not in his rishus. And even though we learned that he could accept the get for her until she's not mitzvah, but how do you know the guy's going to want to divorce her? Need to be able to catch, be able to gash, but he can't force. In other words, he's not always empowered. I can marry off my 5-year-old daughter whenever I want. How do you know somebody's going to want your 5-year-old daughter? It's not in your authority. It's not in your jurisdiction. Yes, your jurisdiction. If somebody wants to marry, you can agree, but you're not empowered to force somebody to marry, or certainly you can't force somebody to divorce her. Elam Ravashi, Reisha Rachmanemne. In the Reisha, the Torah said, because as speaking in Ashati Isha said, we're talking about a Nara over there, and the Torah said, I believe you believe the father. The Reisha Rachmana Hashem believed in him. How do we know Torah that a father is believed to forbid his daughter and to say that she's married? So that you believe him on her status. As biti nasati laish hazeh. Leish, as soon as she says, I gave my daughter over to a man, okay, she can't marry anybody else now, so we find out who that man is. Then he says, Hazeh, Leish Hazeh, Leish Asra, Hazeh Hitira. When he said, this man, so now she's going to marry this man. If he just says, I married off my daughter to a man, I'm not filling in the blank. I'm not telling you who it is. She can't marry anybody because we don't know who he married off to. Soon he says, this guy, Mother's Matzah. So, but as soon as Hashem believed him when it comes to marriage. When it comes to marriage, he's not believed to say, my daughter is a murderer. My daughter did this. My daughter did that. He's believed to say she's married. That he's believed. The Torah believed in that. The Shvuya, when it comes to Shvuya, when it comes to forbidding or eating from eating truma, things of that sort, Torah didn't believe him. So even if she's a ketana, he can't say, he's not empowered to say, like the Mishnah said, my daughter has been taken into captivity by the Goyim. Therefore, the assumption is she's been violated and she can marry Cohen or eat truma. He's not believed to say that. If there's Adam that saw that, fine, but he's not believed. That's the point over here. It's not a difference whether he's authorized or not. He's believed to give her marriage status as long as he's empowered to marry her off. Like, for example, up until the age of Naura. When she's a Gdola, when she's Bogeres 12 and a half, he's not empowered anyway, so he's not believed there because we only find it up until the age of Naura. But as far as her status as being violated by Goyim, he's not believed about that at all. Misha Amar says the Mishnah. So many times there's a question, right? A man dies. If he has no children and he has a brother, there's Yibum. If either he doesn't have any brothers or he has children, there's no Yibum. So let's say he says, when he's on his deathbed, he says, I have sons. Now, why would he say that? To forbid, so there's no vision of Yibum, right? He doesn't want his wife to call Yibum to some brother. He has children. So I believe, he's believed. He says, Yeshli Achim. So in other words, when he says Yeshli Banim, he's trying to what? Free her, right? When he's Yeshli Achim, when he says, I have brothers, he's trying to obligate her, right? To forbid her from marrying anybody else. There he's not believed. Okay, he's not believed. So it means he's believed to release his wife. He's not believed to bind her. Alma, says the Gemara, Alma, he's believed to release her, right? That she can marry anybody. He's not believed to they must see like Rav Nasa. Our mission doesn't come like Rav Nasa. Where do we see Rav Nasa? Let's see. Listen to this price carefully. The Tanya. B'shas קידושין yesh banim. When they got married, he said, I've got children. B'shas mi samar eni banim. When he died, he says he doesn't really have any children, meaning his wife would have to call Yibam. Or b'shas קידושין amar ein le'achim. I don't have any brothers. There's no question of Yibam. B'shas misa, when he died, amar yesh li'achim. I've got brothers. Now, he could either change it. It could either be a change of opinion or a change in status. But the point is that, right, there might have been children could have died, or a brother could have been born to him, whatever. But the question is, when he said one thing, when they got married, that means that she would have to call Yibam, right? In other words, when he died, he was trying to obligate her to Yibam. He's believed to be matter. He's believed what he said b'shas kedushin. He's not believed to aser. That's what Rabbi Dibber. That's what Rabbi says. Rav Nosson Omer. And then we're trying to say our Mishnah doesn't go like Rav Nosson. Rav Nosson Omer af ne'em aser. He's even believed to bind her, to forbid her from marrying anybody else. In other words, when he says on his deathbed, I do have a brother, or I don't have any children, he's believed even for that. Now, in our mission, what do we see? You're believed to release her, but not believed to obligate her, to bind her. So our mission is not like Rav Nosson. Amarava, shiny awesome. In that case, even the b'shas misa. Our mission is not talking about b'shas misa. In general, we're talking about our mission is talking about b'shas misa. I'm sorry, it says b'shas misa, so we believe there. But the difference is shiny awesome. Keeping the b'shas misa kahaderbe emakush kamar. In other words, in the Brisa, you could say it's different. You know why? Because he changed his mind on his deathbed. On his deathbed, we assume, right. In other words, in our mission, we're talking about Stam. There was no, we didn't know one way or another. He said when he died, he has children that she's not obligated. He's believed. He says, I've got brothers with no children. We don't believe him for that. I over here, Rav Nosson says it changes his mind. It changes his mind. He is believed. So he says, since he's on his deathbed, we assume he's telling the truth. Even if Shas Misa Kaharabay, we assume he's telling the truth. So this doesn't make any sense. I'm isn't it a Kal V'chomer? In the Brisa, he changed his testimony. In the beginning, he said, I have children when they got married. Then on his deathbed, he said, I don't have any children. I don't have any children, meaning you better fall Yibam, right? Or when he got married, he said, I don't have any brothers. The Shas Kedushin, I don't have any brothers. Now he says, I do have brothers. So is he obligating her? So we say, Madach, when he's changing, he's contradicting what he said originally. We believe him because he's on his deathbed. And the Mishnah's not contradicting anything. The Mishnah just says a man on his deathbed said, by the way, I've got children. Or by the way, I have a brother. So he's believed to say he has children to release her. He's not believed to say I have a brother to obligate her. So if the Brisa is talking about where he's changing his opinion, he's believed because we say on his deathbed a man wouldn't lie. Certainly the Mishnah he's not even changing his opinion. So that can't be the difference. Elam Rabbiya. So maybe our Mishnah doesn't come out like Rav Nosson. Rabbiya, no. In our mission, we're talking about we don't know this man's history at all. We don't know if he has any brothers. We don't know or if he has any sons. I'm going to keep the funny. We don't know either way. There's no presumption that he has children or brothers. Amar Sif, he says, Yesh li one of them, he's believed. Yesh li acham ein anem. But there's no presumption. Why is he not believed when he says Yesh li acham? Lav kol kamina also let kol alma. He's not empowered to forbid her from marrying anybody else. In other words, we don't know this man. We don't know if he has any sons. We don't know his history. We don't know if he has sons or any brothers. On his deathbed, he says, I have sons. He's releasing her. Fine, no problem. He has sons. There's no yibam. But if on his deathbed, he says, I have some brothers, by the way, in Kansas, and you have to fall yibam, he's going to now obligate her to marry that brother, and she can't marry anybody else until there's yibam or chalitza. He's not believed for that. So our mission is speaking about where there was no presumption at all. The Brisa, and I'm at days now, the Mufsiklan ba'achid b'Muslim. There's no witnesses. We don't know for sure that he has brothers or that he doesn't have sons, but there's a presumption. People say he's one of several brothers. The Muslim, we know that he has brothers, and there's no presumption. The presumption is that he has no children. Darminan. Now we say like this: Mali l'shaker. Listen to this. Mali l'shaker means I have a migu. When we know he has brothers, and at the wedding, what does he say? B'shas Kedushin Amar, I have brothers, but I have sons. Or B'shas Kedushin, he says, I don't have any brothers. When they got married, he says, don't worry, tells his wife, there's no issue with Yibam over here. Either he says at the Kedushin, I have brothers, right? Or I have sons, rather, or I don't have any brothers, right? Either way, there's no Yibam. That's what he told her originally. So now, when he's contradicting the presumption, he has a migu. My kamar, lifter me up. He's saying, don't worry about Yibam. Guys, she's marrying this guy and says, what happens if you die? You have to live with your brother? No. I have sons from a previous marriage, or I don't have any brothers. He's parting from Yibam. He should be believed there. Why? My kamar lifter Yibam. If he wants to, he could say, listen, here's a get shpichal a minute before I die, right? I'm giving you a get shpichal before that. So to get her out of Yibam, he could have done it that way too. So he has a migu that he should be believed. Rebbe, so what's the machlokas over here in the Mishnah? Rebbe says he's not believed to Aser, and Rav Nosson says he is. Rebbe Sabar Mali Shankar Kiedim. When he says that at the beginning, that I have this Miko, he says, you're not going to have evil. Either I have sons or I don't have any brothers. Right? It's like, that's a strong Mali Shakar Migu like this. Mali Shakar's why should I lie is as strong as Adam. But also Adam, Akri Chazaka. The Adam come and uproot, demolish the Chazaka, the presumption that he had brothers. Again, the Bryce speaking about there was a Chazaka that he had brothers and he didn't have any sons. So there was Yibam there. There was potential there was a Yibam potential. He destroyed that by saying, no, I don't have any brothers or I do have sons. He has a Migu. Could have, since he has a Migu, if he wants to just take her out of Yibam, he could just give her a get and say it should be Chal a minute before he dies. So Rebbe holds that's as strong as Adam. That's a real strong, when he says, I don't have any brothers or I do have sons, and I'm trying, there was no Yibam, if he wants to, he could have just given her a get. It's Chal before he died. Okay, that's true. But he gets out of Yibam. Right. Mali Shaka Ki Adam dummy. Basu Adam, Akri Chazaka, and Adam come along, and there's the Miga that he has is as strong as Adam. And the Adam uproot the Chazaka. Therefore, when he later on tries to change it at his deathbed and says, oh, by the way, I do have a brother, or I don't have any sons at the time of death, right? B'shas Misa says, I don't have any sons, or I do have a brother, that can't take away the testimony that he gave at the beginning. Now, if he doesn't change his mind, Taka, at the time of death, he doesn't change his mind. Okay, so we believe him. We said Mali Shakar, take away the chazaka, we believe him. But if he changes his mind at there, does he believe? No, he's not believing. The Rav says that this migu is not as strong as Adam that uproots the chazaka. Mali Shakar is like the chazaka dummy. It doesn't take away the whole chazaka. And what I said before is really applies on Rav Nosson. Meaning, when he said at the beginning that I don't have any brothers or I do have sons, which means there's no yibum, that doesn't take away the presumption. There's still, it's a chazaka against the chazaka. Now, right? So one chazaka takes away the other chazaka, but still, at the time of death, when he changed his mind, not so strong. Take a look at Rashi before the Mishnah. There was a chazak originally that there was going to yibum. The first migu that he had went up against the other chazak. It's like 50 against 50. It's an even Steven. To ruin what he was to Misa. Therefore, when he says b'shas Misa, when Shas says Misa, we believe him. If he didn't retract his opinion, she would be a Sharla. He lost a chazaka, but it ruins the first chazaka. In other words, the first chazaka that said there was yibum there because there was a chazaka that he had brothers and no children. He comes along and says, no, there's no brothers or there is children. Takes her out of that. So the two things are fighting against one another, and we would believe him based on that. But if he comes along and says at the end, no, I changed my mind about that, then there is something there because the first chazaka was not approved. The first chazaka that there should have been yibum was not uprooted entirely. Rebbe holds that the migu takes away the whole chazaka. Therefore, he's not believed to say later on, no, that there is yibum over here, that I do have brothers with no children. Not believe there at the end, Rebbe says. Whereas Rav Nosson says no. So the truth is that our Mishnah could even go like Rav Nosson, that our Mishnah speaking where there's no chazaka. We don't know one way or another. Does he have any children? Does he have any brothers? We don't know. If he says, I have children, he's believed. On that, he's believed because he's releasing her. When he says, I have brothers with no children, he's not believed to obligate her when there's no previous chazaka. The Bryce is speaking where there's a previous chazaka, a presumption that there was a case of yibum over here. He came along at the time of קידושין and said, no, there's no yibum. There's no yibum. Rebbe says that's very strong to say no because he could give her a get. Should be chal a minute before he dies. So it's really as strong as Adam. Therefore, it uproots the whole first chazaka. Once that stands, when he changes his mind at death and wants to obligate her to yibum, not believe. Rebbe Nosson says no. The migu is only as good as the original chazaka. They fight against each other, and therefore, when he comes along and changes his mind at the time of death, he is believed and should have a case of yibum. Amakadosh speak of stam. Now, this Mishnah we had really mentioned back on Daf Nun or Daf Nun Aleph. Mary marries off his daughter's time. He didn't say which daughter. Let's say a man has several daughters. He has, let's say, 2 or more daughters. And he says I'm marrying off my daughter. That's what he says. I'm marrying off my daughter. And we don't know which daughter it is. Marrying off my daughter. He didn't fill in the name on the ksuba or whatever. He didn't fill in the name. So any bogris, if he has a daughter that's over 12 and a half, she's not included because he's not empowered to marry off a daughter like that. So even though there might be a suffix, if he had 2 young daughters, we don't know which one it is. At this point, that's what we're saying. Maybe he had several daughters. Well, the ones who are 12 and a half and older are not included. Obviously, it's not authorized for them, so that doesn't work for them. So we assume that what he did was valid. Mekadesh speak, he married off his daughter, and it was all chuppah and kedushin, whatever. We don't know which daughter it is. Whatever happened, or they never didn't have the chuppah yet. It was only kedushin. Fine, but the bogris can't be included. Mishesh lo shteikitis. That's one case. Then we have another case. This is all brought down. But mishesh lo shteikitis. A man was married twice. He had 2 sets of daughters. Mishtei nashim, 2 women. Okay, with woman A and woman B. From woman A, he had number 1 and number 2, and from woman number 2, from woman B, he had number 3 and number 4. So 1 and 2 were from one wife, 3 and 4 were from a second wife. I married off my older daughter. Now, what did he mean? We don't know. He says, Aini Yodea, I don't know. Married off my older daughter, I'm not sure which one I meant. Did I mean number 1 or number 2? Number 2 is also older than the ones from then number 3 and 4. Or maybe I meant number 3 because she's older than number 4. So we don't know. Kulan Asuras, they're all forbidden to marry anybody else till they get a get. Chutzpah, the husband is chutzpah except for the youngest one. The youngest one, certainly, he said, I'm marrying my older daughter. Can't mean the youngest, it can't be number 4. Different marriage. They're all mutar chutzpah. When he said they're older, he meant number 1. He's very clear. Okay. Similar the other way. I married off my youngest daughter, meaning he married off number 4, maybe. Any of them, I don't know if I meant number 4, or number 2 was the youngest one of the older daughters, or number 3, which is also a katana, but she's the oldest one of the younger ones. She katana mekanos, right? Because she's younger than the youngest one of those. She's number 3 is younger than number 2. Kulan Asus are also chutzpah to go except for the oldest one. Except for number 1. Different marriage. Yossi says they're all mutter. He only meant number 4. So Yossi says a man's very clear, and Rav Meir says he's not. Now the first part of the Mishnah said the first line actually because stam the gogus are included. But wait a minute, if he had several young daughters, he married off my daughter. He had a few girls who were 5, 6, and 7 years old. And then the older daughter who's 18. So the 18 is not included. It's mashma 5, 6, and 7 would be a marriage. How could the marriage be consummated? You don't know which one it is. We had a machlokes of Rava, right? We talk a pasuk like Abaye, what קידושין שם מסורים לביה is a קידושין, but this would be a riot to Abaye. קידושין שם מסורים לביה have a קידושין because he said he had 3 young daughters, 5, 6, and 7. He married one of them up, and we don't know which one it is. He doesn't know. We don't know. So you can't marry any of them, right? The husband can't sleep with any of them because it might be the sister of his wife. So how does the קידושין work? Is that a קידושין? No, he only had 2 daughters. One was 18, one was 9. That was it. So, and he said, I married off my daughter. Obviously, it was the 9-year-old. You can't marry off the 18-year-old. I have a bogros. It says plural, Tani. I bogos down. And it means in general, when anybody does this, he can't marry off older girls in general. It says Pshita, bogus my veritayu, bogus he can't. He has no authorization at all. He has no jurisdiction over his older girl. His 18-year-old pointed him and says, Dad, Mary, get me a husband. I'm pointing you a shliach. You're my shliach to accept קידושין for me from whichever man you can find. Get the best guy in Lakewood. Let me marry him. Now the same time, I think. When he accepted קידושין was for her. After all, he was appointed a shliach. He accepted it for his 18-year-old, not for the 9-year-old. A person wouldn't leave aside something he gets enough. When he marries off the 9-year-old, he keeps the money, right? He's the author. He's not gonna, if he accepts קידושין, he would accept for the 9-year-old where he keeps the money. She doesn't keep them. The 18-year-old, she gets the money. So because he's just a shliach for her. So we assume therefore that's the chiddush. There's really only an 18-year-old and a 9-year-old. Of course, Abaye could learn this is a proof to him that קידושין שם מסורים לביה is a קידושין. Maybe it's a 5, 6, and 7-year-old. He has 3 young girls. But Rava will say no. Speaking more, there's only an 18-year-old and a 9-year-old. And the Chiddush is that even though the 18-year-old appointed him a shliach, he's accepted kedusha for the 9-year-old. There's more milo askin and the armor like kedusha, kedusha l'cha. Maybe the 18-year-old said, "You can keep the money, Dad." How do you know that he's not going to leave the 9-year-old where he keeps the money and give it to the 18-year-old? She keeps the money. Maybe the 18-year-old said, "Marry off me and you can keep the money." Person has an obligation to marry off his 9-year-old. His 18-year-old, she is on her own jurisdiction. It's not his obligation anymore. So a person wouldn't leave his own obligation to fulfill somebody else's obligation, despite whatever the family dynamics are. That's the assumption here. So Strifa, why do you have to tell me about the case? Rav Meir says, if there's 1, 2, 3, and 4, and he said the oldest one, you have to assume it could be 1, 2, or 3. If it's the youngest one, it could be 2, 3, or 4. We don't know, right? Whereas, why do you tell me both cases? It's obvious, the oldest and youngest. Yes, we come in the first case where he said, "I'm marrying off my older daughter." Maybe there, Rav Meir says what it could be 1, 2, or 3. You keep in the ecosystem since there's somebody younger. Maybe since somebody's younger, even number 3, even though she's the third daughter, but since there's somebody younger, she's could be the older sister, right? But in this case, for the kana lachtana, the kulu karla, when he says my youngest daughter, certainly meant number 4, not number 3 or number 2. Mashma know that even there he said youngest daughter, since number 2 is younger than number 1 and 3 is younger than number 2, it could have been any of them. Maybe you tell me the case of kana there. It's obvious when I said my young daughter, we meant the youngest one. But in the case where he said my oldest daughter, maybe he meant number 2 or number 3 who are older than the other ones. So he tell me both. Maybe Rav Meir Savar, tell me Rav Meir holds that a person puts himself to a suffix. Said my oldest daughter, my older daughter, my gedola, my gola. It could have been 1, 2, or 3. But if Yosef Savar, when a person said older daughter, he meant the oldest one, number 1. The other way around. The time. No, they're out of Pesach. Make an edit, you not say you're not going to eat oranges. Oranges are supposed to be out of Pesach. Right? Out of Pesach. Asr Achiagia. It's Asr until Pesach starts. Out of Pesach means until Pesach. The first, so as soon as it's Leil Pesach, he can eat. Achiagia Pesach until the Pesach is, Pesach is for 7 days. Asr Achiagia until Pesach is over. He's Asr. Ad Pnei Pesach until before Pesach. What do you mean with before Pesach? Right? What does that mean? Does it mean the beginning of Pesach? Or each day of Pesach is before the next day of Pesach? So Meir Savar Asr Achiagia. Rav Meir says, no, it's only until the beginning. He's clear. Rav Yosef until it goes, because we don't know what it means. So you see, Rav Yossi is specific in the Lashon. This is usually Rav Shapiro is used for Rav Yochanan. Here's Rav Chanina. Rav Dimi says, we turn around by the neder until Pesach. We turn around. Rav Meir is the one who says until the end of Pesach he can't eat because it's a suffix. What did he mean? Rav Yossi says no. At Pnei Pesach, a person's always very clear in his words. When he said Pesach, he meant until the beginning of Pesach. Here we see this out called Koshas Manakabua. Whenever it's got a fixed time, but Omer Ad Pnei, and he says until before. Rav Meir Omer Ad Sheyetz. Rav Meir Omer Ad Sheyetz. Rav Meir's not sure. So maybe Pnei means before the last day of Pesach or whatever, or before. So you're obligated to keep it until the end. Whereas Rav Meir is not sure. Rav Yossi might get until the beginning. Amar Abayah, Machlokas b'shtei kitei banos. Listen to this. Machlokas is only when there's 2 sets of girls, right? The 1 and 2 is from wife number A, and 3 and 4 is from wife number B. After this one group, everybody gives it. Just he only had one group of girls, 1 and 2, let's say. Or 1, 2, and 3. 1 is the oldest, 3 is the youngest, 2 is the middle one. Then he only had one set. Gedola means the oldest one. Tana means the youngest one. And Tzos Bishma Korilanas, even though he had 3 daughters from one wife, and he said the older daughter, you don't say they might have meant number 2. She's not the oldest one. You wouldn't call her. You call her by her name. That's what Abaya says. If that's the case. In our case, in our Mishnah, when we said it's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Maybe it's 1, 2, and 3 from A, and 4, 5, and 6 from number B. So what about the middle one there? I'm sorry, Shabakachniya, Tishtri, she should also be mutter, because you're saying over here that if it's in one pot, you know which one you mean, right? So I'm sorry, Shabakachniya, Tishtri. Our Mishnah said that everybody is forbidden in the first case where he's at the goal, except for the youngest of the youngest. What about if there was a middle one in the second group, that she should be mutter according to what you're saying, because within one group A person would says the oldest one means the oldest one, the middle is the middle, and the youngest is the youngest. If that's the case in Shashar, and we don't say that, the Mishnah says everybody's forbidden except the youngest one. So the Gemara says, our Mishnah is speaking about when wife number 2 only had a Gedol and a Khan. There were only 2 girls there. But in a Hanami, if there would be 3, the Mishnah would say that what chutzmen aktanos shevaktanos, except for the second and third daughters of number 2. If there is a third daughter there, Lisnayan should say it. Why didn't it say it? And tell me that chiddush, that even though if there's 3 daughters, only the oldest daughter of the second wife would be forbidden, not the other ones. The middle one of the first wife, she certainly could be Gdola because she's older than all the ones from the second wife. Why don't you mention Basira and why don't you say Miktanila? And that's not mentioned. So don't say since it's not mentioned, it shows you that she would taka be mutter. She would taka be mutter because we don't mention it in the ratio either. So Hachash I can compare. Hasam Tanaktana Dida Surah for there we say that the younger one, meaning the youngest daughter of the first wife, is also. Of course, the middle one would be us. You don't have to tell me if there were 2 groups of wives, right? And he said the oldest one, and the first wife had 1, 2, and 3, and the second wife had 4, 5, and 6. You don't have to tell me that number 2 of the first wife would be forbidden because even number 3 is forbidden because she's older than everybody in the second wife, right? So there, you don't have to tell me this. The Tanakani meaning. The youngest of the first wife is also certainly the middle one would be also. But over here, Emisa Deika, if there is a middle one of the second group, the Snayat should tell me that to tell me that she would taka be also if she would be also. Am I speaking about there is no middle girl in the second group? Because if there would be, she taka would be mutter. Pesach by Pesach, there's only like one group. There's no 2 groups over here. There's a machlokas between Rav Meir and Rav Yossi. The machlokas is not about groups and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. The question is, what does Pnei mean? Right, Yossi means until the beginning of Pesach. Until Pesach is over, until it's left. It's panui, it's gone. So that's the machlokas over there. And as Rav Meir says, yes, Rav Meir is more misupak in his lashon, and Rav Yosef says a person doesn't put himself into a position like that. Person would be very clear, but there's no 2 cut in. But it comes out, according to what we're saying here, that if the first wife had 3 daughters and the second wife had 3 daughters, right, and in that order, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that was their birth order also. And the man said, I married off my older daughter, my daughter Dola. It can mean 1, 2, or 3 from number 1. Or number 4, the first one of the second wife. But just like the Kana of the youngest one, number 6 would not be included, neither would number 5, right? Neither would number 5 because she's also conservative Kanos. The youngest ones would be included, the middle one would be included. He wouldn't refer to his 5th child, to the third one, to the second one from his second wife as the older one. He wouldn't refer to it that way. That's what comes out according to what Abai says. Picking up a mission tomorrow.